Why didn't Japan attack the Soviet Union in World War II? See, I know nothing about this shit. I would actually like to know about this shit because Germany declared war on America in the Second World War when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, as far as I know. So why didn't Japan declare war on the Soviet Union to help Germany? Right? Makes sense, right? Makes sense, like, you do this and the other person do that. Yeah, right? Yeah. Based. Okay. Good that we all understand. Because I have no idea why the fuck they didn't do it. Oh, wait, sound.
Operation Barbarossa. The campaign eventually ended in a humiliating failure for Germany.
Yeah, it did.
But
Definitely
not before devastating both sides with startling numbers of casualties.
Very true.
The Russo-German war seemed at full capacity on its own, but there was actually a point at which a third party may have joined. Japan.
Yeah.
Entering the fight against the Soviet Union, if they had chosen to do so, Japan would have invaded Siberia and forced the Russians to split their attention between the Japanese and Germans, putting them into a two-front war. But what exactly would the outcome of this have been? And why didn't Japan attack the USSR?
See, does this just look good on paper? Is that why, like, it looks good on paper, like, two-front war, right? But there has to be something behind it why they didn't do it. Like, why didn't...
This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream,
big backstab.
A subscription
we're gonna watch
service that offers
ads.
thousands of documentaries and
respect
non-fiction titles from some of the world's best filmmakers, including exclusive originals. CuriosityStream is the Netflix for history and science lovers, and it is also extremely affordable at under $20 a year. This is my personal favorite streaming service, a place where I can watch all these well-made documentaries and learn more about different topics, including what I love most, history. One of my favorite documentaries
I just knew he was going to say that shit.
Into the Arizona. In this one, you will learn more about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and the destruction of the USS Arizona. Because you are our subscriber, we have a special offer for you. Click on my link in the description for unlimited access to the world's top documentaries and nonfiction series, and use promo code NOLEGIA, and you will save 25% off, which comes out to only $14.99 a year. So click the link below or go to curiositystream.com/Nolegia and start learning more by watching incredible documentaries. Nearing the outbreak of the Second World War, Japan's military leadership seemed to be fairly divided about what to do with their own empire. One faction, supported by the Navy, believed that the best thing for Japan would be to expand further south and take parts of Southeast Asia, while the army preferred a strategy that focused on pushing north into Siberia to seize the region and take down the Soviet Union.
I would agree with the army here.
The latter option was actually gaining some traction, and it became a genuine possibility. As Imperial Japan saw things, the USSR was still industrializing and consolidating power, and could potentially be an easy target if they acted fast. On the flip side, though, under Joseph Stalin, Russia was becoming more robust, and it may be too late to act. Alternatively, the West, who controlled parts of Southeast Asia that Japan was eyeing, didn't seem to be all that strong in the region, and may actually be an easier target by this point. This made the decision of who to focus on first increasingly difficult, but the answer may have presented itself clearly enough in 1939.
So what he's saying is, right here, he's not probably about to say this, that if they had done, like, attacked the USSR, or the Soviet Union, when Germany did, that would have been the best opportunity to do so, because then Russia would have been, like, that rotten structure, but this rotten structure, of course, like, built itself up. But that would essentially have been the best time to do so, is actually when the war popped off in the Soviet Union. But that was also why they didn't, like, the decision to do it lost popularity after. I'm pretty sure that's how I'm supposed to understand it. But yeah, fucking makes sense in my opinion. Makes sense.
Japan and the Soviet Union had come in dangerously close proximity of each other through their concurrent expansion policies. This inevitably had caused some border skirmishes off and on beginning in 1932. And although war was never declared, things did get pretty intense.
Yeah, wasn't there like a border
Between
skirmish at some point?
1932 through 1934, hundreds of border disputes were reported by both expansionist powers due to misunderstandings or attempted espionage from either side.
Bruh.
With the Soviet satellite of Mongolia butting right up to the Japanese-controlled Manchukuo, and any form of diplomacy between Japan and the USSR rapidly deteriorating, it appeared to be impossible for peace to exist at the borders. And the events of this rivalry would go to show the Japanese exactly what it would be like to face off with the Russians. In 1935, a series of attacks by the Mongolians and Russians were carried out along the Manchukuo border against the local and Japanese troops.
Oh, what the fuck that is.
Which left the latter fairly battered. Although they managed to remain strong and hold their ground to round out the year, it became apparent to Japan that the Soviets were undeniably a potent adversary. The next year, the clashes began to grow in intensity.
Excuse me, so there was no de-escalation at all? Like, isn't it the point, like, I'm pretty sure they didn't want to go at war with each other, right? But these border skirmishes just made it worse or what? I know. As we should just wait. Watch it wait.
This can be seen by the Torin incident during the spring, where both sides utilized armored vehicles and military aircraft. Japan seemed to be gaining more traction against the Soviets as they beat back against their opponents with more success than in the year prior.
Okay, yeah.
Almost halfway into 1937, the Russians tried to cross the border into Japanese territory
so the Russians
and occupy the island of Kanchazu.
It wasn't just the Japanese that were assholes.
The Japanese hit back with stunning aggression and completely routed the invaders, scaring the Soviets into withdrawing the rest of the men from the island. A month later, Japan invaded China, and tensions between the USSR and Japan caused the Soviets to warn their Americans that they feared an attack would be coming from the Germans and Japanese simultaneously. Ooh. Ironically, if Japan had been really considering an attack on the USSR, they were soon about to change their minds. The next summer started off okay for the Japanese, with an invasion into Soviet territory that was justified by confusion surrounding the previously agreed-upon demarcation lines. Although both sides took heavy casualties, the Japanese had been much less damaged, and eventually requested a ceasefire, which the Russians agreed to by mid-August.
Okay, so the Japanese got to win.
Confident after their recent relative prosperity, the Japanese were in for a shock when they decided to go on the offensive in the summer of 1939.
But I don't get it. Did they want to go? It seems like the army just wants to go to war. Like, why do they keep doing this? Is there really any point to it?
Damage was done, but all in all, the first attempts made in July of 1939 were generally a failure. The Soviets were no more successful in their counteroffensives at first either, but that eventually changed. By the end of this series of skirmishes, known as the Battles of Khalkhin-Gol, the Japanese were in
Soviet Union and Mongolia, 28,000 soldiers, aircraft, 253 tanks, 300 cars, and vehicles signaling animal casualties. Holy shit. Japan and their allies. Okay, so Japan lost a lot less aircrafts, but a hell of a lot less tanks. 7 tankettes, 72 artillery pieces, 7 motor vehicles losses, 2,002. Holy shit, that's a lot of horses. But yeah, it seems like the Soviet Union definitely lost the most.
Annihilated. As peace talks ended after the devastating final stand, Japan realized that it was surely too late to take advantage of the weakened USSR. Industrially, numerically, and militarily, the Soviets were no longer a struggling power and had left the Japanese behind. If this was any sign of how an invasion of Siberia would end, there was no doubt that such an act would be utter foolishness.
If those are like the casualty numbers, like just from that, it makes sense they didn't attack.
And if there was anyone left in Tokyo who still wanted to push north, despite the risks, Germany would have
Okay, he looks a bit funny.
intentionally put an end to that.
Like,
During the last stretch of the Khalkhin-Gol conflicts, the USSR signed a non-aggression pact with Germany in hopes of avoiding an attack from both sides. Germany, a formal ally of Japan, would have a considerable influence on whether the Japanese would attack Russia or not, and when. Launching corresponding incursions on two fronts of the USSR.
Yeah. If they'd done that at the same time, like in 1941 or whatever the fuck the war started, right? That would have been massive. Like that would, I'm pretty sure the Soviet Union would definitely have been destroyed if the Japanese had also joined in.
Could have split the Soviet forces and greatly increased the likelihood of an Axis victory, which therefore would have made it more plausible for Japan to side with their army's cry to push into Siberia. But now, with Germany locked into a peace deal, Japan was left on its own. And having just been crushed by the Soviet forces outside of Siberia, it seemed pretty clear that any more invasions would end in disaster. On April 13th, 1941, Japan and Russia officially signed a neutrality pact. The Navy faction had won the argument
They actually signed that shit? What?
Of where to go next, and Japan was now fully focused on attacking the West, both in Southeast Asia and abroad.
Just seems so dumb though.
When Operation Barbarossa was launched a couple months later by the Germans, there may have been some whispers in Tokyo about reversing course and joining their ally.
Yeah.
But there doesn't appear to have been any serious consideration for this. Planning had already begun for the fight against the West, and the Japanese had realized that their chances of crippling the United States as opposed to the Soviet Union were much higher. An incursion into Russia would allow for the Soviets to fight back by land and air, but an attack on the US could be done by air and sea, which would force the Americans to fight back in the same circumstances which Japan believed would give them the advantage after they could destroy the American Pacific Fleet.
I gotta admit, the attack on Pearl Harbor, I think it was a retarded attack. I don't think it was really ever gonna be that great of an attack, honestly. And it's definitely was hella optimistic that they would ever fucking do any of the things they say, like destroy the entire American Navy. Yeah, that sounds good on paper, but can you actually fucking do it? See, that's the big question. Can they do it? No, they could not. But I still think, but this kind of like just sounds like the Japanese were actually like pretty fucking weak on land, so they kind of had to go for like the United States because they had invested a lot into their navy. Yeah, I don't know, dude.
By this point in time, with Khalkhin-Gol still fresh in the minds of the Japanese, there was simply no reason to abandon the non-aggression agreement and join the Germans. Doing so would have surely benefited their allies by distracting the Russian defensive forces. But it wouldn't have done much at all for Japan, other than bringing in more casualties and other damage. Also, the war with China consumed a lot of resources and manpower.
Well, maybe it was the best choice not to do it then. I don't know, dude. Like, the Japanese could also just try to hold the line, you know? Like, if the Russians would maybe like to try to do some attacks, they could just have sent some divisions up there just to hold the line. They didn't have to invade and like do a bunch of shit. Like, but they could try to destroy maybe convoys and stuff like that. I know I'm talking like hot spine shit in real world, right? But like they could just try to cripple the trade, right? Something like that. But yeah, I don't know, dude.
It would have been probably impossible for the Japanese to attack the Soviets and in the same time fighting the more numerous Chinese and trying to invade resourceful islands in southeastern Asia. Tokyo had already been divided on whether or not to invade Siberia, so there was always a possibility for the Navy faction to win on its own. Hence, even when Germany broke its own pact with the USSR by commencement of Operation Barbarossa, Japan decided to maintain its stance of non-aggression, due to the other list of reasons that backed the Expand South faction.
Yeah.
While it would not have been impossible to find at least minimal success had the Expand North Army faction won, it surely would have been highly unlikely, and ultimately, Japan made the decision that they saw to be the safest and most logical.
Okay, I do
at the
agree
time.
there. I definitely do agree. Definitely an amazing fucking video. And they do bring up a lot of good points. I definitely agree with that. And they definitely have like a lot of good points, like the fact that they needed resources, which is why they went south. There was the struggle between army and the navy. And I guess also the air force, but they don't really matter that much. So that struggle, and the navy won because due to them having better reasons. And it does also make sense that maybe finish China before you go after the USSR. Like, if you play it, even like it's just put a perspective in the Hearts of Iron. If you're already at war with China, maybe you should not like start splitting up your fucking army and go for the fucking USSR. But yeah, that's just my opinion, I guess. But yeah, great fucking video. I'll definitely leave a link in chat, and yeah, great fucking video. And now we gotta find out what to do next.